Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Campaign Middle East on the Record podcast, where we speak to leaders here in the region and from across the globe about the key trends and challenges shaping the Middle East brand and marketing industry. I'm Anup Oman, the editor of Campaign Middle East, and joining me on the show is Virginia Ocampo, the director of global strategy at Spiro. Virginia, thank you for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Virginia. How was the flight?
It was good. Good. Yeah, we have been doing several workshops across the region. So this is number 16.
Wow.
But it has been fantastic. Yeah.
Clearly back to back.
Yes.
We're going to dive into that a little bit. But before we do that, there are certain questions, obviously, within the industry. Now that I have you here on the hot seat, it would be nice to pick your brains a little bit about. Let's start with consumers. Consumers at the moment, this new generation of consumers has come up as have also asked to become part of the conversation.
Right.
They have asked for more immersive, more interactive experiences, but they want it to be authentic. They want it to be personalized, hyper personalized to them. How can we both lean into our current human expertise that we bring to the table and combine that with the data analytics and the LLM based insights that we're gaining
Right.
to bring this to life in a way that is culturally relevant, that is brand safe, and is consistent with the global strategy that we have?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. So let's start by the fact that connection is what is bonding consumers and brands. Those connections mean different things for different audiences, right? So what we do is, as you said, AI, data analytics, all of that gives us tools, but we still need to do the interpretation of those tools. So we use insights to understand that raw data. What does it mean? What do we do with those insights? That insight will then inform a strategy that will guide the direction of that experience. So we said we don't jump into tactics. Tactics without strategy are an expensive noise. So we start with a data, insight, strategy, and then is the creative direction of that experience. And ultimately, what that will ensure is that the impact of that connection that you were talking about at the beginning will have a higher impact with the audience.
I like that. Tactics without strategy is expensive noise. I've got my headline there. We'll move on. But part of that conversation, also moving from consumers to brands, a lot of brands, especially within the region, whether it's government clients or private clients, have been overly focused on this concept of ROI, brand and business outcomes that they're looking at. And that's the conversation even that's happening on the exco between the CMOs, the CFOs. It's always looking at marketing more than just a cost center. And it's become all the more with experiential because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like there's a need to break this myth that exists that we can't measure experiential.
Yeah, you're totally right on that. So I think we have to stop viewing experiential as a cost and start treating it as a strategic investment in brand equity, right? So what we need are the right metrics. What matters, right? We need the right metrics to have a measurable experience that speaks to the impact. It goes beyond ROI, and I think maybe we discussed later what are those tools that we can utilize for cost optimization, but also justification from a stakeholder perspective when it comes to experiential. It goes beyond return on investment. What is the return on the objectives, on the experience, and on the community that impact your brand on that activation.
Is it then an education piece, like understanding that this is so much more than just individual performance metrics that you're looking at, that there is a need to understand that there is a cost benefit analysis, there is a total return on experiences that we need to understand before we look at and measure. And also the fact that we can go beyond just a strategic or an abstract view of it to actually fix attribution to a certain extent, so that we can see real returns on upper funnel brand equity as much as lower funnel conversions that they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we need to create is experiential literacy around this new way and move away from planning events to designing experiences, right? If you could forget about everything you know about events, do it. And take this new approach. It's a time for rethinking how we design experiences. You have the tools. There's technology, AI, metrics. At Spiro, we have our own trademark frameworks and models that will guide that process into how we can create an impactful experience.
How do you make that distinction? Like if you were talking to a marketer right now, and we've had some really big events in the region, how do you get that psychological shift, so to speak, moving away from viewing it as an event that has overheads and metrics and all the things that need to be activated, so to speak, at that event, to understanding that it's a consumer experience, a brand experience that they're speaking to?
Yeah, I think moving away from tactics and asking questions such as, is this event driven by strategy or a habit? Right? Have we always been, are we keep doing this event because we always had, is it a trade show that, in the last 5-10 years we always been, right? So we have to start being strategic, and that's why we start with strategy in the whole process, right? You need definition of KPIs when it comes to your events, objectives, clear objectives. Without those, anything, any efforts that you do will be wasted. So you need a strategy that aligns KPI objectives, that takes the right insights from the data tools that you utilize, and that connects your brands with an understanding of the audience. That's another metric, right? We have tools called Gravity Index that breaks down 7 drivers in audiences to be more accurate with the design of the experience, and that will result in a higher impact and engagement with your audience. So it's about educational. It's about being strategic. When stakeholders are asking you to justify cost, you become strategic right away, right? So and also when you see events and brand activations as a strategic investment and part of your brand equity, it starts generating data, benchmark information to inform other departments, right? So it's kind of being strategic with your portfolio of events, assessing what you're doing now, stop, and even if you have to reduce your event calendar to half, right? But be more strategic with where are you attending, where is your audience at that you have missed, where are those white spaces where you can show and participate that your audience is, right? There's an example that we're seeing very often now, working with healthcare industries, that they do this cross-industry partnership, right? So healthcare goes to sport events or entertainment, and they move away from traditional trade shows, right? Because the impact of your brand in those environments and ecosystems is higher than trade show. There's obviously some trade shows, industry, B2B, that you have to be present, but when it comes to B2C, there are great channels, sponsorship at sport events or entertainment, etc. Great channels for engagement.
Excellent. I'm going to marry two aspects that we spoke about. One was the education piece, and the other is the workshops and trainings that we mentioned right at the start. And the reason I'm asking this is because not all marketers are event strategists, and vice versa to that extent. Is there a need, therefore, for more such workshops, more such trainings to ensure that we have experiential thinking embedded into the teams of every brand, experiential thinking embedded into the agencies and experiential agencies that we support, even within our own teams?
Yeah.
Because quite often, like, there's this saying that's going around in the industry that you have to get your own house in order first. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's just a fancy number on the wall
Yeah.
that you're trying to achieve.
That's a great question, and absolutely. And it's not just your events team or marketing, but also have stakeholders on board, right? Have that agreement. You know, when you design your business strategy, and then you have your event strategy, there have to be some cohesiveness and integration. So I think once that perception shifts, and you start seeing events as a strategic investment, the whole perception changes, right? And yes, there's education, like I mentioned before. We just had 12 workshops in Riyadh with our top clients, also 8 here in the Middle East, and the roadshow continues, and has been amazing to, you know, sit with our clients and understand some are more ahead than others. But even if, you know, brands have been in the market for 30 years, it's never too late to assess where they are at, right? The portfolio of events, the way they communicate, is the consistency of messages, especially in big industries that they have different business units. The audience and on B2B, but the audiences are different, so you can't go with the same message and the same content to
different audiences.
Yeah, to different audiences. So yeah, educational. We run, you know, workshops, discovery sessions. You guys bring a lot of insights to the market as well. So I said the education is. We are continuously learning, right, and educating ourselves. But we have the tools, and I think that educational process goes faster nowadays than 10 years ago, because we have tools and metrics and models that can guide the implementation and that shift into a more strategic approach to experiential.
Excellent. We've been talking a bit abstract at the moment. I want to pull this conversation into the real as well, right?
Sure.
Because the best way to show it is by proving it, by doing
Yeah.
it, by executing it, right? Can you give us a case study again? No names taken, but just a case study from the region that actually shows
Yeah.
that you and the client were aligned on strategy, that there were clear objectives, there was a clear KPI set to
Yeah.
be met, with a clear understanding of what experiential brings to their marketing strategy,
Yeah.
how it was executed, why it was executed that way, and what were the success metrics that you benchmarked on to showcase the impact that has on outcomes.
Yeah, of course. So we worked with many clients on a strategy consulting basis and perspective. So I think the first way we've done in this particular case that I'm thinking of, without mentioning it, was assessing where they were at with their portfolio of events. So their challenge was a global company. They have regional events, but also international presence, and they wanted to have that consistency of brand awareness and engagement. So we broke down their portfolio of events, but also understanding who their audiences were. Again, they were with one message fit them all, where they had different industries, different sectors, different audiences. So we kind of rewrote their script for that. We train as well in their subject matter experts on how to engage with audiences during events. Try to humanize the script when it came from an industry, and trying to storytell and engage in different ways. So the results were amazing. We audited also like 7 of their main events, trade shows, and started giving them the insights to have their own benchmark for success, right? So we compared from year 1 to year 2 and year 3, and the results were fantastic. So we had, for example, in the common KPIs like attendee engagement, right?
Footfall.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the attendee engagement was, I think, improved from a 24%, that is like an industry average, to 45. Brand perception, lead generation, it was fantastic. Post-event engagement. So we could measure, right, and report exactly
pre, during, and post.
Yeah, so that's an example how working strategically, having strategy lead your experiential marketing is measurable and has a higher impact than without doing it.
I like that little piece that you mentioned in between, because there's a lot of people, especially within the B2B, B2C space, who really know their product. They really
Yeah.
know their brand. But a lot of it is based on teaching them how to tell their own story.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And taking that to the market, because if they're able to understand that, then the consumers share in that experience.
Yeah. These SMEs that we work with, they were super smart. They were engineering, physicians. They were extremely smart. But when it comes to engaging, there's an aspect of, retraining and writing that narrative that it resonates.
Wonderful. Before we conclude, I'll keep this forum open. Is there absolutely anything? Think of, we've got a massive viewership, all the brands, all the marketers, all
No
the client
pressure.
side, no pressure at all. If there's a message that you want to convey specifically within experiential, now that you've seen the region, you know that there's an education piece, but you also know there's massive appetite for growth and learning.
Yeah.
What's the main takeaways that you would have?
I think the region is unique in itself, is rewriting the story in different sectors, right? I think now it's time to rewrite the story of experiential as well. So I think keep it simple, lead with strategy, right? Don't try to overcomplicate things from a brand perspective. If you start with strategy, you have the right tools, methodologies, you have roadmaps, and you have the right partner that will guide you through that transition. That is more than half of the battle won. So that per se is innovation. We don't need to go further at this stage. And experiential innovation starts by creating higher impact. That's it. And there's a way to do that.
Innovation starts with having a higher impact, not just running into the latest technologies or tools that are at our fingertips. Isn't that the perfect way to end this podcast? Thank you, Virginia, for joining us on this show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It was a fantastic discussion. And on that note, thanks for joining us on this show. That's a wrap on this episode of Campaign Middle East on the Record podcast. Stay tuned for more such discussions with leaders in the industry. That's all for now. And until next time, goodbye.